Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the R&D Podcast. I am your host, Rachel.
And I'm Delia.
And in this episode, we're going to be talking about prenups. Let's get down to business, you guys. Prenups. Why are they important? Are they important? Should you have one?
I mean, I know Kanye West saying we want prenup. I definitely think that they are so important. I mean, in retrospect, as you say, hindsight's 2020. I think that this way you have an understanding of how everyone's going to operate, and you can kind of gauge people based on how you think that things would be split fairly. I know that there's a divorce attorney out of New York. He's written a lot of best-selling books out of New York, and he says that, you wouldn't buy a house without a contract. You wouldn't buy a car without a contract. There's so many things, like, for instance, like when you go buy a car, the contracts are just infinite amounts of pages. But when you actually get married, it's just you have someone there that is just kind of co-signing the marriage, and then that's it. And there is no understanding on how everyone's going to operate. I know that, from my understanding and what I've read and seen, there are clauses that, if your significant other should cheat, the prenup goes out the window. I've also heard of women that set up their husbands because they no longer want to be married and they want to do away with the prenup. So you got to get really strategic, and you got to get a really good attorney to draft up that prenup.
I've actually heard attorneys say that they will not mess with anybody who wants to put an adultery clause in their prenup.
Okay.
Because of the entrapment, and stuff like that. Because it creates like a way out, in a sense, that can be like manipulative or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I know that. Sorry to cut you off before I forget. This particular attorney out of New York, he also says he does not do postnuptial agreements because he says that most of them will not hold their weight in court because they will feel that the woman felt in duress when she was, again, we're not attorneys by no means necessary, but according to him, the woman might say that she was under duress and that's why she signed it, and that's why he veers away from postnuptial agreements.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that with you before I forget the whole, prenup.
I think it's all really interesting. I know that it took me, making some sort of a life for myself in order to see the value of a prenup. And I know that now, looking back, I remember seeing an interview with Donald Trump at the time. This was back before he even did The Apprentice. And they were asking him about, I think he was doing like the Art of the Deal at the time. Yeah. And they were asking him about prenups, and he said, absolutely. He said, even if you have nothing, if you're an individual who's really driven and you're on a mission to create something, already have essentially the deal breakers outlined in what this would be a prenup. Now, we have a mutual friend that's in this building that, she's a divorce attorney, and she's a great one at that. And she has said, well, if you don't have anything, right, like, it's debatable.
Right.
But I know that it's a matter of, like, go get many opinions until you find a place to land. But as a woman, you guys, even if you don't really have anything going on, even if he's just barely making his money, it's a security for you anyways, because in the event that the tower does crumble, there's an exit clause there. There's something there that says no matter what happens, if this thing comes to an end, he has to do XYZ for you.
Right. I mean, I think that it's a protection. I mean, this I don't want to praise this attorney, but I really follow him because I really like what he has to say and his insights. His thought processes are that he thinks that prenups are romantic. And I thought that was kind of funny. And I was like, what is a logical reason behind why he would think that they're romantic? And he said, because when you are in good terms with someone, you'd be like, no, honey, if we buy the boat, I want you to keep the boat. Versus I'll be damned if you keep the boat. I will blow that mother effer up before you freaking get it. So in his opinion, he feels that the prenups are a romantic thing to do. And so, I don't know. I would like to agree, but I really don't know. I mean, if you see that your partner's being very loving and caring and say, you know what, I'd be fair in this regard. Anyway, it's on a contract. I mean, maybe you'd be like, okay, cool, he'd be fair. I will say that there are clauses, like, for instance, I follow this housewife from the Miami Housewives. We talk about her a lot, Lisa Hochstein. And her clause was that she was not to contest the prenuptial agreement. Otherwise, the amount of money that she was supposed to get on a monthly basis would drop substantially, and she could be ordered to pay the attorney fees. And so from my understanding, I mean, of course, he's trying to just be done with it. I know that she kind of, bit herself in the butt, or however you call that. It bit her in the butt, basically, because she was trying to contest the prenup. But it was an ironclad prenup that gave her, that put all these clauses in. This plastic surgeon was really smart to.
And Florida allows, by the way, like the cheating clauses. They have more clauses than
anywhere else.
Yeah, like California, forget about it.
Oh, yeah. California, you're screwed. I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting when I saw that regarding.
Because she also had a 30-day vacate, right, from the house.
Yes,
there was a 30-day vacate.
I mean, this freaking plastic surgeon. I mean, I think that it was her bad. And I'm not here. I don't know her personally, and I don't want to judge. But I think it was kind of her bad that she got so comfortable to not think outside the box. Because according to the little bit that I've heard, like you said, 30-day vacate, and he was only going to do so much. And obviously she was completely 100% reliant on his income. And so I think it was kind of a little bit, she dropped the ball a little bit.
Young, because she was in her early 20s, right? And and then she scores this kind of up and coming,
plastic
surgeon and I mean, who would have thought? I mean, they bought the house so cheap, the original one, and they remodeled it. They've made a lot of money during their marriage, a lot, of net worth has taken place during their marriage. And I just can see that maybe she just thought it was always going, that there's rough patches, but that they were going to be able to get through it. Yeah.
And then in comes the young 20-year-old, and out goes a 40-year-old. And so that's how that happened. And I do think that, in my opinion, I think that it allows you to understand how everyone's going to operate. I know on previous episodes I talked about a specific person in my life that, this person that she's engaged to basically took a big, large loan out of their house, mortgaged the home that now they're going to live in, and he wants her to pay more of the amount of money per month because he's mortgaging the house. And so when I came at her and I said, well, tell him that you want a prenup, all of a sudden he was pissed. And he's like, why would you say that? I mean, the guy was, put it to you this way. The prenup conversation ended the engagement.
Oh, it's over.
Yeah, it is basically pretty much over.
But see, you get to the truth though faster,
exactly.
I mean, it's painful, and you could argue, oh God, well, why'd she even go that route? But it's good to have the difficult conversations, because you get to the truth of the whole situation faster.
And I think that that's literally the message here, in my opinion, right? Because I think it allows you to understand, if someone says, all right, you are dating a guy that's well-to-do, and he says, I want a prenuptial agreement. And if you say, F no, how dare you, this, that, or the other, you already know how she's moving, or vice versa, because this happened to a girlfriend of mine. And so I told her, you already see how he's going to operate. Yeah. So you'd be the fool to be like, I could change him. Let me tell you something. You could never change anyone. If they're showing you who they are, believe them. That's exactly who they are. And so I think that if you can actually come from a place of, you know what, have the prenuptial agreement, conversation, make it to where it's fair.
And you know what? Go get a free consultation with a great lawyer.
I agree.
And see what they'll say to you, because they're gonna say it's the best thing you could do.
It depends, because you said our mutual attorney friend said if you don't have anything. But what if you're working on a project that is as big as Amazon, let's just say, because a lot of people are techie these days. Maybe they're working on an app, or maybe they're working on scaling up their business, or maybe you as a woman are thinking about, how am I going to scale up my business? I want to go worldwide. Maybe I want to launch an IPO. I want to be in the New York Stock Exchange. And now you're with this particular person that maybe doesn't see that vision, or doesn't see what you see, but you love this person. I think that you can get to the truth a lot faster, to just be like, okay, this is what I want. And if you agree, then we move forward. And if you don't agree, then we back out. Because like you said, with my girlfriend, she got to the truth right away. There's not going to be any attorney fees that are going to be, incurred, because all of a sudden now, she was the last one to find out that all he wanted was, her money.
And you got to remember that if you are a young woman, if you're watching this and you're in your 20s, you're probably not exposed to a lot of people
right.
who are older than you that are involved in business, success, or they have assets. They might just have regular jobs, but they have homes, rental homes, whatever it might be, RVs, whatever it might be. And so you might not have as much access to people that are like going to give you that hindsight, so that you can look at it more as like the business part of marriage.
Right.
Because like Delia's saying, like you go buy a car or you go buy a business or anything you do, you buy a house, like anything you embark on, if you form a partnership, a corporation, like there's so much paperwork, there's so many things that you have to create, operating agreements, all these things.
Yes.
But yet you go get married and it's a simple like one sheet that you sign it and it gets stamped.
Yep.
And then there's no operating agreement, there's no nothing, and hopefully you dated smart in a way where you communicated your deal breakers. But the reality of the situation is it's like get that out of the way first. And you might also not be fully aware of what your options are. That's what I'm saying. Speak to a few lawyers to say, okay, he wants a prenup from me. Okay, the attorneys might say, well, why? What does he do? Well, he's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, or he already owns a house, or whatever. But what does that look like for me? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And you might find, like I said, that it's the best thing that you could do, that you shouldn't be afraid of it. I think that oftentimes we're afraid of what we don't understand.
Right.
And so don't look at it, if somebody says they want a prenup from you, don't look at it like they're calling you a gold digger. Don't look at it like they're saying that they're going to leave you.
Yep.
Don't look at it as a threat. This is a smart move, and you should be very glad that he's smart enough to know to even do this.
Yeah.
And then just go get informed so that you can feel comfortable and not fearful of it.
I agree. Yeah. I think one of the things that I remember, you and I having a conversation regarding this topic, and I can always remember you saying, and this always resonates with me even when I give this type of advice, is that, at the end of the day, whatever prenuptial agreement has been drafted doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. I mean, you can do your edits. Yes. And in addition to that, if you can put a clause in there of your exit strategy, because, oftentimes, that's the one thing that I remember you saying. It's like putting a clause in there stating that your exit strategy will look like this. And so, the last thing you'd want is, I'm not trying to project this into your life, but the last thing you'd want is, you're married 20 years and obviously, your face value has gone down, unfortunately. Like it will go down for anybody, really. And all of a sudden he leaves you for, like I say it time and time again, for his secretary. Now, what is the exit clause in that prenuptial agreement? Again, we're not attorneys, by no means necessary, but I think is if you can get to the truth as fast as you can and understand what you're getting into. When you buy a car, you understand you're purchasing it for 72 months. Your payment's going to be so much.
It's like a lease, because at the end there's a buyout amount and it's pre-negotiated. When you enter into a lease, they don't surprise you at the end. You go, okay, you're going to lease it for 3 years, but at the end of 3 years, you have the option to buy it at this set price that was already negotiated ahead of time. So I think it's like moving forward through your marriage, knowing peace of mind. If you do 10 years and you got 2 kids, the law is in your favor to a degree. But if you have this prenup that says, hey, you get the condo and he has to pay you $5,000 a month and he has to pay for the kids' private school, like all that would be done. Covers your insurance, health insurance, and maybe an education, maybe he'll pay for your college. I don't know. Whatever you negotiate, you have an option to include your exit clause in there. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I've heard this time and time again that it benefits you as the wife to sign it. Even if your plan is to be, especially if your plan is to be a housewife, you want to make sure you have something there.
Yeah, and a lot of these things that we're talking about could be on hypotheticals, because maybe you're just getting married and you don't have children yet. So it's a hypothetical, clause. Like you're just speaking hypothetically. In the event that you have children. In the event that you buy a house together. So it's all hypotheticals. Yeah. But I think even on hypotheticals, you're still covering your butt. Because in the event that it should happen, you at least know what, how everyone's going to operate. And I think it's so important that, you look at it that way, because at the end of the day, again, you wouldn't go buy a car and they would just hand you the keys and just be like, all right, figure it out. I mean, most of the time they have a whole person that comes out. The salesperson tells you how to start the car, where the emergency e-brake is, where the hazards are. And let me tell you, when you get married, no one's going to give you a tutorial on how you're supposed to operate your marriage. And unfortunately, at least this gives you a peace of mind that, hey, if he doesn't act right, this is what's going to happen. In addition to that, by the way, because I'm in the life insurance sector, I do believe that also, and because you would love him and you'd want to make sure that he's okay, getting a policy on each other is a great idea. Because you never know what could happen. on the side of that, I do believe that, you know, your conversation away from anything, and you sit down and you draft up what in a perfect world you would want, and in a perfect world what he would want. And let me tell you, if he starts acting crazy, freaking tie up your Nikes and run, because you already know how he's gonna act. And just, I'm just saying.
I met a woman. I worked for her husband. I met a woman, and she had a prenup, and they had been together already like 12 years. And she was so over him in so many ways, but she's like, I'm not gonna go anywhere because the prenup says X, Y, and Z, whatever.
Yeah.
And I said to her, oh, I heard on the radio, because I was listening to the radio, I heard on the radio that if you never made an edit to that prenup, it's actually not valid. Like it's like Swiss cheese. And she said, what? And I said, yeah, because actually making an edit to the agreement means you actually read the agreement.
And then
it means you read it.
It means you read it, and then
you signed it, which says you agree. But the fact that you haven't made any changes to it means you may actually have a case that you never read it, and that you felt like the marriage wouldn't go through unless you signed it, which is a form of duress. Yeah. And I'm innocently, I was like 25 years old at the time, having this conversation with this 40-something-year-old woman, and I'm like, and then I saw her face change. She just looked at me and she goes, really? Oh my gosh. Like where? Like what? And I said, no, it's on the radio as an attorney. And she's like, oh. And I don't know what happened from there, because I didn't work there. Because I didn't work there that long. Because I said, did you make an edit? And she's like, no. She just signed it.
So she's like, okay.
So there's all these amazing little things that you guys can sort of investigate, but that's all I'm going to say.
And before we end this, I just got to tell you this, just so it resonates with you. Initially, I think when you're first engaged, I don't think the person's going to act all crazy, right? Yeah. But however, I do remember, and I've shared this first season, second season, and now we're on the fourth season of this lady that I actually was at the car wash, and she sat right next to me, and she's telling me a little bit of her life story. I mean, like just little pieces. And I think that she had just very much a regular car, but she says she remembers the days where she had fancy cars. And she looks down and she says, man, she's like, you know, the unfortunate part about this whole thing is, if I knew he wasn't fair in the marriage, why would I ever think he was going to be fair in the divorce? And so this man basically wiped her out. And so if you look at it in that regard, that if this person's not being fair in the marriage, why would he be fair in the divorce? Now, this is just a protection, right? So you got to look at it that way, instead of it like looking at it as if there's going to be a loss because there's all these clauses. I think that if you guys can both come to a meeting of the minds to say, okay, in a perfect world, this is what I'd like and this is what you'd like. And I think if you guys can move forward, great. Yeah. But I definitely think that if there's something that is a hang-up for you, then you need to talk about it, because the last thing you want is to go into this the biggest contract, by the way, that you're going to sign in your lifetime. That if you're going to go under this contract, that you understand what you're signing and what you're getting yourself into. So I think that you have to take those things into consideration before,
and that you're not
saying yes.
relying on the court system, ladies. We are not living in a time anymore where you automatically get this, or because you're the mom that, or because you're raising the kids this. No, we're living in a day and age where women can actually make money. And go to work, and the court systems are really starting to lean in that direction, waive out debts that are back due for so many men. They're like wiping it off the books and saying, hey, the women can go work. So you need to be mindful. Don't go into this, with whatever maybe your mom is telling you because you saw what your dad had to do. Times have changed so much. And
you have to go
so don't sit there and say, oh yeah, if I do 10 years and I have 2 kids, I'm automatically going to get XYZ.
Not always.
And even if the court does vote in your favor or whatever, good luck collecting, ladies and gentlemen.
He may not ever pay.
The amount, he may never pay you.
Yep, and that's all I got to say. So you know what? You got to make your own ends, and you got to make your ends meet, because sometimes people will make sure that that, at the end, it's your bad for leaving. And so, count your losses and lick your wounds and keep it moving. All right. That's all we got.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Cheers.